Hi guys, 2D animation is the name of the game here. I'm going to take some sprites. David, sorry, I've got his name over here. David Hellman, who did the sprites for Braid. He basically put all the Braid sprites up. So I've borrowed David. Hope you don't mind. It's for education purposes only. I guess is my, cry in this one. So he's put the sprites up there, so we're going to use his sprite sheet to show how to do 2D sprite animation transitions in Unity. So without further ado, let's get cracking after the fade. So we are going to need some images for this. So I'm going to borrow, I have a cheat sheet over here. Well, I have like a whole bunch of files over here, so I'm going to borrow this one here, which is our favorite enemy from, let me just right click that there. So I think you'll recognize this. This is the enemy from Braid. So these images actually come from, if I get this right, where are we? We are Braid sprite sheets are Braid. Okay, so these sprite sheets are actually from here. This is Dave Hellman. I'll put the link in the description below. Basically, he provides all these images on his website. So thanks, David. The images are fantastic. So I converted them to a to a sprite sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and right now they are in a single animation, the single sprite. So I'm going to mark that as being multiple. They are 1200 by 1200, which means that each sprite it's a 6x6 grid. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6x6. So we have 36 images. We could actually get 35 because that one's missing there. So that's roughly 200 pixels per image. So I'm going to say that. Actually, no, let's leave it as 100 because that means that half of this image is now, this pixels per unit refers to the Unity units. So for every one Unity unit, you are going along 100 pixels. That's what that means there. So I'm going to click on apply there. And I'm going to go into the Sprite Editor. And there's various options in here. There's automatic, there's all this kind of stuff. But if you have them in an ordered sprite sheet like this, where it's in regimented rows and columns, the easiest one to go to is actually grid by cell count. And here we specify the number of sprites. And this is the nice bit about this, is we don't need to know the sprite size. We just need to be able to count up to, in this case, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've got that sorted out there, and then we click on slice, and that gives us our images. Now we can actually click in here, we can resize them slightly, so if they're a little bit too much or a little bit too less, whatever. We can also change the pivot as well, which is what I should have done here, because I actually want the pivot to be on the bottom. So I'm going to choose bottom, and I'm going to click on slice again, and you see that the pivot is now, that circle there is now on the bottom of the image of each sprite. And down here you see we have some palette information here. So we have the name of this frame. So this frame is stack 04_0, and then this one here is 15. Okay. So now we click on apply, and we can close this. So now if I bring this front and center, we now have a list of all our frames. Now we can actually just drag these individually into the scene. So you go, there's our scene there, and we can see our items are there, which is great, but what we really want to do is we actually want to create an animation based on this. So what we're going to do, just making sure we're running this. Yes, we are. Okay. What we want to do is we want to select the first frame of our animation and then the last frame of our animation. So this is going to be this one here. So you see how there's like a surprise animation here? I'm going to choose the first 15 frames of this animation. Okay, so that's, well, first 16 frames, which is 0 through to 16 there. And I'm going to drag them all into the hierarchy. And now what happens is I get this dialog box popping up, and it asks me for my new animation. So I'm going to call this monster walking, because this is the monster walking animation. And I'm also going to save my scene, and I'm going to call it monster example. And I'm going to run my scene now, and I get nothing because my camera's not in the right place. I'm gonna guess, where's my camera? Oh, my camera's way up there because I changed it to 500. So I did a couple of videos today. The other one was the orange tint video, which is up here, link there. That's why it's going orange. I'm going to turn that off for just now because it's a bit too orange. So I'm just going to make it that color there, so that's fine. So if you wondered why it's going orange, then the link's up there. Okay, so now I'll move him back a bit. You now see that we have our view, and press play. There we go, we have our animation, which is a little bit too slow. So what we can do is we can select our monster. Let's call this something monster. Let's call it something usable, monster. And then we go to window, and then we want animator. No, we don't. We want animation. And here we have our timeline view, and each one of these is a keyframe that specifies the different animation. So if we actually expand that, you see that this is, it's difficult to see at this resolution. Even zooming in, it would be difficult to see. But basically, you're looking at the sort of individual frames of the animation here. One word of warning, when you go into this and you start clicking around, it actually puts it inside a record mode. So you can see here that it's got, this is all red and this is red here. To get out of record mode, just click that button there and you come right out of it. Anyway, so this is the one that we want here. And I'm going to dock this along the bottom. So you'll see that when we run this, if we go to our animator, you see that it's doing this monster walking. So this is our sort of state machine that we're going to come back to in just a sec. But our animation was a bit slow because it's running at 12 frames per second. If we want to speed that up a bit to say 15 frames a second, we actually get a much nicer walk cycle. So you can see that our figure here is now walking sort of kind of correctly. Okay, so that's one animation. What if you want to have 2 animations? What if you want to have 3 animations? What if you want to have 4 animations? What if you want to have N animations? I don't know how to N animations. What do you need to do here? Well, if we go down to our animation, I'll bring this into the main view here. So this is our animation here. Excuse me. What you want to do is you want to click on where it says monster walking. Remember, that was the name of our animation we created before, and we just create new clip. So we're going to call this monster startled. And our monster startled doesn't have anything against it, but it does say samples 60. So we're going to change that to 15 because we want it to be the same speed as our original timeline, which was 15. And then we're going to go to the end here, and this is our startle animation here. These 4 frames. And I'm just going to drag these into the timeline at this point here. I had problems with this before, and I don't. Yeah, it seems to pick up some keys and not other keys. Let's try that again. Okay, so I want this one and I want this one. Okay, so I want these 4 keys. Drag, drop. There you go. It's a bit hit and miss for me. Maybe it'll be better for you, but it's a bit hit and miss for me. So if we play that and then we look in the game, oh, because it's not showing. Well, it's success after success, this, isn't it? Okay. Why is that not working? Oh, there you go. I don't know why that wasn't working. I think it was probably because this was in the... If you know, let me know. But it's working now. So you can see here that he's in a kind of startled animation bit here. He's kind of shaking like that. So we want to transition between the walking animation and the startled animation. So our walking animation, to remind us, is just him plodding like that, and then when we click the mouse or do something, we want him to sort of react to that. So we go into our animator. You can see that we have our entry, and it immediately goes into our monster walking. But to get to the monster startled, we're going to have to add a couple of parameters. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a coroutine in just a sec, that when you click, it sets a trigger, it waits a couple of seconds, and then resets the trigger. So I'm going to add 2 triggers here. So a trigger is just basically you mention this parameter by name, so you can specify different parameters for animations. We're going to specify a startle animation and a normal animation, or a normal trigger, I should say, and a normal and a startle trigger, and that's going to feed our condition for this transition here. So this is like a state machine. If you're not familiar with the state machine, again, I will leave a link below to give you a sort of description of it. But basically, these are the states that an object can be in. So if you think of something like water. Water can be in 3 states. It can be a gas, it could be steam, it could be a solid, it could be ice, and it could be a liquid, which is drinking water. And transitioning between those is how we get between those states. So when we boil water, we transition it from liquid state to gas state. And when we cool water, we transition it from the liquid state to the solid state, which is ice. So that's the difference between state and transition. So we're going to add the triggers. So these triggers are going to get us into this state. So we're going to call this one surprised. Or just call it surprise. And then the other one we're going to call normal. Okay. So to get from the walking state to the startled state, indeed from any state really, from any state to the startled state, we are going to add a transition. So you right click on the state, and then you make transition, and then you just drag. See how you get this arrow here? You get to the state that you want, and then you press the left button on your mouse. Now that gives us our transition. Now if we click on the transition there, you can see that we have this information here, which has got you know, the exit time and all these kind of things. So we don't want to have any exit time, and we don't want any transition durations. We just want the transition to be immediate. But we only want it to happen when there is a surprise condition. So we just added the plus there. If I just delete that again, so it says the condition. So what condition does this transition do? So it's like when you want to boil, when you want to transition between water and steam, you boil it. So this would be you adding the match to the stove to heat it up. So our trigger is going to be surprise, and you see that it's chosen surprise as default because it's the first trigger. Now, to go from surprise to walking, what we want to do is we want to add a trigger that makes it go back the other way, which is going to be our normal trigger. So we right click on monster startled, and we make transition, and we choose monster walking. Then we click the transition, and again we get rid of the transition duration. We don't need that. We don't need the exit time. And then we need a condition, so we're going to add another condition down here, and that condition is going to be normal. Okay, so when we run this, nothing is going to change. It's still going to be the little guy wandering around on the scene. So we need to add something to do to interact with this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add inside the project, I'm going to add a C# script called monster hit. And with monster hit, I am going to add him to monster. So this is our monster over in the hierarchy, and I'm just going to drag that script over into there and then double click it. Okay, so here's our script. I don't need collections, and I do need all this stuff. I'm going to rebuild it myself. So the first thing is I'm going to have a field called startled, or surprised. Let's keep these names consistent. And one called anim. So that's my animator, which is going to be attached to the object, because this is attached to the monster object, which has the animator attached to it. So in my start, I'm going to assign that to the component. So that goes away and gets the animator without me asking for it. It just works inside the code. And then inside the update method, I want to, when I press the fire button, which is basically left mouse, and it's the way I've set it up, but it's the default for Unity, I want to trigger this animation that moves us into the startle mode. So I have an update then, and the update is going to say if input.get button up, but we don't want that to be constantly triggered, so we only want to do it if it's not surprised. So if the monster isn't already surprised. And now I want to start a coroutine that sets the trigger, waits a second, and then resets the trigger. Okay, so start coroutine act surprised. So I have a coroutine now called act surprised, and I get rid of that collections, and I shouldn't have. I should have kept that collections because I'm going to need it for my enumerator. So my act surprise, I'm going to set surprised fire the trigger, wait a second, fire the trigger normal, and then reset the surprise flag. Okay, so that is that's all we need to do for our code there. Now let's just, it's going to get an error message down here because it's going to say that it doesn't return a value. I just want to check the animator, so I have surprise and normal is the name of the triggers, so that's fine. Okay, so set surprise flag, so that's easy. Surprised equals true. Fire the trigger surprise, so that's inside this animator object. So I do anim.setTrigger, and I specify surprise, and then I wait a second, so I do yield return you wait 4 seconds 1, and then I reset it, so I want to reset it back to the walk animation, so I do anim set trigger normal, and then I reset the surprise flag, so surprised equals false. Okay. So, and there's a lot of settings and everything that go into this animator and the various transitions, everything. Which is not something I want to go into in this video. This is just more of an introduction to animation. Alright, so we have our little guy walking around there. So if we bop him in the beak, he should go into his surprise animation for a second and then return to his walk animation. So let's bop him in the beak. There you go. Let's hit him again for good measure. Boink! Pizza. Yeah, there you go. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. That is a sort of very basic way to get sprite animation into your Unity application. So yeah, if you want the sort of more complicated part of that covered, then let me know in the comments below. But yeah, I mean that's kind of gets you started anyway, without having to know too much in detail of you know what's going on and behind the scenes or what kind of other options you have. So yeah, let me know. Anyway, thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you next day. Bye. I just realized why that is not working. Okay, because the door is open. There you go. That's quieter now.